My spider sense tells me this cake isn't for eating. It's for throwing!
Your cake!
Are you freaking kidding me? What? Nobody asked you to prom, so now you dress as a bat and prowl around your parents' basement?
Sir, you on the ceiling? You can't board this plane without a ticket.
Don't worry, I promise I won't get in the plane.
I can't believe it. I'm alive! I'm alive!
Look, I'm not just a nut and long johns. I go to college and everything.
What, like the dozen swords in your back?
I don't have swords in my...
Yuck. Gonna go hurl now.
Spidey is known for his little quips, and no one is safe from them. The Peter Parker of Earth 19,529, or the Spider-Man life story world roasted Mr. Fantastic like he has never been roasted before. After finding out that Mr. Fantastic is withholding life-changing information from the public, again, Peter goes off on the guy. I mean, Mr. Fantastic is also talking like he is God and superpowered people are better than your average human, which Peter doesn't really appreciate. Peter says, "You're so not human that even your wife left you for a man who lives under the sea," because this is the world, of course, where Susan Storm left him for Namor. Yeah, Peter was slapped for that one, but he figured that it was the least he could do after burning the guy that bad. But the rest of the team isn't safe from being served some Spider-Man embarrassment either. In the early days of Marvel Comics, Spider-Man was looking for a team to join because he was looking for a salary. So he tried to make the Fantastic Four the Fantastic Five. Only when he leaped into the F4 headquarters, he ended up in a glass cage that he immediately broke out of despite costing the F4 thousands of dollars. He smacked the thing clear across the room, taking the Human Torch out with him, trapped Mr. Fantastic in a web, and Mrs. Fantastic was spun around until she was dizzy. All in all, he gave the team quite a run for their money. Spider-Man in the Ultimate Universe was the highlight of that show, and Ultimate Spider-Man 67, the story where he gets body swapped with Wolverine, is just so funny. Not the stuff with Mary Jane, of course. I'm mainly referring to the banter between the unlikely pair. Turns out Jean Grey had swapped the two as punishment to Logan because he thought being in Peter's body would be the worst thing to ever happen, and it was for the both of them. Wolverine, with his rough approach to life, nearly ruined Peter's relationships with almost everyone, but Peter also caused some trouble getting the guy arrested and of course making quite a few jokes at his expense, including calling Wolverine's body a chia pet and smelly. Many times, stinky dog body were his exact words. Then in a battle later, as Peter is quipping away in Logan's body, the man stops him because Peter is making him look bad. Since the X-Men caused Peter so much grief when he is swapped back, he kinda goes off on them, resulting in the iconic panel in which Spider-Man tells the team why people really hate them and then proceeds to use such colorful language, it's not even written out on the page before swinging away. The X-Men decided to send Peter a basket of something as an apology. But that's not the only time Peter has embarrassed the X-Men. Towards the start of the team's journey, Spider-Man received a personal invitation to join the team in X-Men 27. Professor X himself requested that Beast and Iceman ask Peter, but he turned them down. He said it was because he had already turned down the Avengers, and I guess it wouldn't look good to turn them down and then accept another offer so soon after. Spider-Man also did it because he believed fate meant for him to be a loner. He really was an angsty teen. He literally swung away and left the two X-Men just standing there, wondering how he could turn away such an amazing offer. There was also the moment in the original Secret Wars series where Spider-Man meets the X-Men again, but on very different terms. He literally bursts onto the scene and takes the team out all while jumping and backflipping out of reach. He makes it look easy. Wolverine literally says Spider-Man made them look like fools and amateurs. Spider-Man got the chance to fight the Hulk in Amazing Spider-Man 328. In that issue, Hulk remarks that Spidey was a lot stronger than he remembered, and despite the strength the Hulk is working with, Spider-Man still comes out on top. Hulk might have had to escape because the sun was coming up and at this point he could only come out at night, but that is so beside the point. A later fight between the two heroes in Spider-Man Unlimited 11, that happened on the news, and it was cool because we watched it in the comic as if we were sitting in our local restaurant. The broadcast shows a tough fight. Hulk looks like he is winning at one point, patrons start placing bets, but then Spidey kicks the Hulk into a wall and a cement truck falls on him. Of course, throughout the whole fight, Spider-Man is also throwing out little jokes and jabs. So not only was the Hulk defeated and had a cement truck dropped on him on national TV, he also had a sarcastic commentary going too. There were a few other times when the heroes brawled, but some of them had outside factors that made the fight unfair, like tranquilizer gas for the Hulk. Peter has told MJ that he thinks he can kill the Hulk, but Peter has a no-kill rule. One thing about Spider-Man and Daredevil, they are going to throw a few punches. These two are operating in the same, admittedly large city, but still every once in a while they cross paths in ways that result in them fighting each other instead of working together. Even times when they are supposed to be working together, the plans don't always go so well. Take Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man 110 for example. The two heroes are rushing to save a victim from the Sin Eater, but after the villain is down, pretty soon Daredevil and Spider-Man have turned on each other. Peter had an emotional stake in this particular fight, so he was operating out of a place of anger, meaning he was being a bit too rough with this particular villain, and Daredevil stepped in. Very heroic of him, he tried to talk Spider-Man down, but that just got him thrown out a window by Peter, and then chased through the streets. Daredevil even says that if Peter were more in his right mind, he'd be finished. Then there was also the Amazing Spider-Man 287, in which Peter and Matt were in a cab together, and of course, they started arguing, eventually tumbling out of that cab to brawl on the sidewalk. Peter almost won that fight, if it weren't for the fact that they were in their civilian identities, so to the world, Matt is just a blind man that Peter is beating up on the sidewalk. Not a good look. Peter was physically removed by the cab driver. Those two were either the greatest team to hit New York or at each other's throats, no in between. Not even heroes from different universes are safe from the wrath of Spider-Man. Superboy, the one from DC. Yes, he went toe-to-toe with the web slinger and did not come out victorious. This one is controversial because there was a bit of a God in the Machine happening here. For this face-off, it was part of a voting thing. DC and Marvel characters were up against each other, and then fans could vote about who would win the fight, and in this instance, Spider-Man won that vote, which is embarrassing on its own, but then there's also how he won the battle in the comic. It was a good time. Spidey held his own against Superboy. At one point, a water tower gets busted and floods where the two heroes are fighting. Superboy moves to attack Spider-Man, but instead he gets webbed and crashes into a high voltage box, and you can imagine how that went inside the water. The fight was over and Superboy was cooked. Spider-Man really embarrassed all the spider people and things in Into the Spider-Verse when he was able to outrun all of them. Miles Morales has proven himself to be a force to be reckoned with over the past few movies, and in the comics too of course, but this ain't about that. There is no reason for Miles to be able to not just outrun but also outwit thousands of spider variants from across the universe, other than he's just that special and different and cool. I imagine the sting from that was hard to nurse, and I can't wait to see how the Spider Society moves forward when they finally release the second half, hopefully. Iron Man might be a father figure to Peter in the MCU, but that story is very different in the comics. I mean, it kind of depends on who is writing, but whoever did Amazing Spider-Man 536, Volume 413, or Spider-Man Annual 20 certainly wanted to see those two tussle. The Spider-Man and Iron Man of the MCU are so tame in comparison to the comic versions of themselves. MCU Tony would give Peter a jukebox and play catch in the backyard. Comic Tony has tried throwing Peter across Manhattan. MCU Tony left Peter Edith. Comic Tony roasted Peter's company to the point of Spider-Man punching him across the face and the resulting brawl being live streamed across New York. Tony tends to forget that he is but a man in a metal suit. A powerful metal suit, but a man at the end of the day, and sometimes he needs a little reminder every once in a while. Spider-Man has given him that reminder quite a few times. ASM 536 Iron Man is after Spidey because Peter is against the Superhuman Registration Act. Peter wins the fight, he overrides Iron Man's armor, and then webs him in the face for good measure. ASM 13 featured the fight after Tony insulted Peter's company to his face. In his defense, he didn't know Peter was Spider-Man, and he was saying all that stuff to Spider-Man, not Peter, but still getting clocked in front of all your friends, fans, and the internet at large, that's embarrassing. Amazing Spider-Man Annual 20 features a bunch of, like, Tony time travel, but the important thing to this video is that Spider-Man gets really mad at Iron Man and throws him into a construction site and then attacks him until Tony is saved by time shifting back to his reality. Rough. Captain America and Spider-Man are an unlikely sparring pair, but when they do go toe-to-toe, it's always a fun read. Cap even once admitted that he wasn't as strong as Spider-Man. But the truly embarrassing Captain Spider-Man moment happened in an alleyway. Peter at this point is wanted by the FBI, and Cap is trying to reason with him, but Peter is having a rough go of it. Cap ends up getting punched in the face. He's holding back his feelings about all of this a bit, I think, because he can tell that Peter is just acting out because he's going through it. Cap takes his shield to block another punch, but Peter grabs that shield and smashes it in the Captain's face. I think I would quit if someone defeated me with my own indestructible superhero symbol. To top it off, Peter escaped, adding some salt to the wound.
Bane targeted Batman himself in Batman Volume 1, issue 497. Alone and exhausted in Wayne Manor, Batman returns home to find Bane waiting on him. With nothing left in his energy reserves, Batman wages a futile fight against his adversary that ends with Bane breaking Batman's back over his knee. Batman barely landed a single punch on his monstrous opponent, making this one of the Dark Knight's most one-sided losses in his 8-decade history. For an obsessed genius, Lex Luthor sure had fun coming up with overly complicated traps to foil Superman. One such trap involved making it necessary for Superman to need a whole new suit, and then disguising himself as the man who provides it. Hey, it even comes with an anti-kryptonite belt. It says so, right there on the belt, in case there's any doubt. But unbeknownst to Superman, Lex has actually hidden a lead-wrapped lump of kryptonite in the belt, which the incredibly gullible Superman doesn't seem to notice. Word to the wise Man of Steel, thoroughly check out all aspects of your work clothes next time. Okay, buddy? As anybody who has watched America's Funniest Home Videos knows, one sure way to get a laugh is to show a dude getting knocked in you-know-where. And Spider-Man learned this while fighting the villains Screwball and Jester. While Screwball live-streamed the encounter, Jester took out his slingshot and sparked a solid hit right between the old spider thighs. And it didn't help that this occurred when Doc Ock had taken over Spider-Man's body, or that the humiliation continued with paint-filled balloons. Peter Parker might have dealt with such humiliation a little bit better than Doc Ock. He at least kept his cool while battling Spot, a guy who's basically a human portal, and ended up punching himself in the face. Poor Spidey. So Flash was fooled by a painting during Barry Allen's first ever outing as a superhero. So I guess in theory I should cut him some slack, but I'm not going to. See, the deal was that the fastest man alive, once again, the Flash, was being thwarted by the slowest man alive, namely Turtle Man. Sounds fun in theory, but in truth it was kinda painful to watch Barry unable to capture a guy because he kept overdoing things or not noticing he was there. But the biggest humiliation came when Turtle Man fooled Flash by simply painting a silhouette of himself on a wall. Barry thought this was the real thing, and while reaching for the shadow, smashes into the wall. Very Wile E. Coyote for a super speedster. So, as the name Avengers Disassembled implies, this was a bad point in time for almost all of the Avengers, and it certainly qualifies as one of their worst defeats. The 2004 to 2005 crossover storyline was Brian Michael Bendis' way of revamping the Avengers into a team and state that he felt was, better at the time. It featured a story that weaved between several key Avengers members and showed them at their worst. Iron Man's long-term love interest dies, so he decides to give up being the Secretary of Defense in Iron Man. Thor and the rest of the Asgardians are wiped out by a force that is supposedly the physical embodiment of Ragnarok, which they had averted numerous times before. Spider-Man, poor guy, is transformed into a spider creature loyal to the Spider Queen, Adriana. In the main Avengers storyline, they're also harmed by a mind-controlled Scarlet Witch. She summons a zombified Jack of Hearts, who explodes, a weakened Vision, who upchucks up eggs that turned into Ultron drones, and a Kree warship. Numerous heroes are killed in this conflict, including Vision, Jack of Hearts, Ant-Man, Scott, and Hawkeye. On top of that, the Avengers have their security clearance revoked, and public opinion about them has fallen. So this was a bitter defeat for the Avengers. Just Once they confront Scarlet Witch, she sends wave after wave of artificially created constructs until Doctor Strange puts her into a coma. Not a good one all around. The humiliation from the defeat of Gorilla Grodd publicly capturing the League stems from the fact that it came about due to the League's own faults. So in this story, Gorilla sets up the Secret Society with the intention to prey on the League's weaknesses. After the members got hot-headed over how they didn't need the others, Grodd made his move by capturing each member individually. And in order to rub it in the faces of the public at large, charge, Grodd had the heroes strapped up and encased in pods for everybody to see. So not only were they handily, taken out earlier, they were also made to look really stupid. It took the Martian Manhunter's shapeshifting to save the League from further embarrassment by freeing them. 13 years ago, Peter Parker was on a school field trip to a science lab. There, a spider got a large dose of radioactivity, dying for life. Spider bit Peter on the hand. We all know this, I know we all know this, but what we don't know is something else happened too. In this case, the spider didn't die right away. Instead, it crawled on the floor, bit a young dark-haired girl near the ankle, and that's how we got Silk. And she is Spider-Man's original sin. After being dead for a while, having Doc Ock in his body, Peter's like, hey, I'm gonna go out and fight some crime. This is Amazing Spider-Man, Volume 3, Issue 1. The Menagerie, a new crime team. We've got White Rabbit, Skeen, Hippo, and new villainous Panda Mania. They're going on a rampage, stealing very expensive eggs in an auction heist. A man nearly falls over onto a little one, but his fall is broken by Spider-Man. White Rabbit starts firing at him, but Spider-Man defeats her, takes the eggs back, webs them to safety. Hippo throws a car at Spidey, claiming the eggs would secure his future, but Spider-Man's like, hey, we're already in the future. And then somebody else is like, hey, old Spidey's back. They realize something, and this is where the point is, folks. Outside of his mask, web shooters, and the web around his nether regions, Spider-Man is completely in the nude. Thankfully, he's able to keep his mask on before his identity is revealed, but his dignity didn't have the same fate. Peter defeats all 4 villains before being chased off by angry civilians, and gets home and is like, okay, that wasn't half bad. Let's keep going, folks. In the Cadmus arc of Justice League Unlimited, Lex Luthor devised a plan to discredit Superman by running a presidential campaign and feigning an act of having reformed. Bit by bit, Superman's allies turn on him, especially after Lex causes the Justice League Watchtower's death ray to fire on Earth. The humiliating portion was during Lex's unveiling of a new city, making Superman believe he'd planted an explosive underneath. With Shazam favoring Lex, he and Superman engaged in a fight that completely leveled the city. After realizing Lex had fooled him and there was no explosive, the Justice League is discredited in the eyes of the public, and the public is calling for their surrender to the government. Oops. One of the most embarrassing ways to lose to your arch nemesis would have to be doing so on your own turf, and during the Under Siege, readers got to see exactly that. The Masters of Evil have been the antithesis of the Avengers since they premiered in the Avengers issue 6 in 1964. They were assembled by Captain America foe Baron Heinrich Zemo, who was tired of always losing to Captain America and kind of not a fan of the formation of the Avengers. Later, his son would pull together another incarnation of the Masters of Evil, made up of others who were tired of being defeated by the Avengers. This time, fueled purely by revenge, they avoided the big evil plan and just invaded Avengers Mansion while the Avengers were out. From there, things had to get worse for the Avengers before they could get better. Zemo and the Masters laid waste to the mansion and tormented Jarvis while Captain America watched. They even managed to get one over on Hercules. Within an inch of his life, using a combination of manipulation and raw power, the Avengers had to regroup and call in some backup before they were able to retake their own mansion. But for quite some time there, the Masters won. They took the Avengers home from them and trashed it, while mercilessly harming several people they cared about. In Justice League issue number 69, during which the backup squad was known as Justice League International, Doomsday went out to cause huge levels of destruction. After breaking free from his prison, Doomsday rampaged through the countryside and suburbs on a collision course with Metropolis. But before Superman could swoop in and save the day, the Justice League tracked the monster down and came face to face with a force the likes of which they had never battled before. On this occasion, the monster was mostly in a subdued state, with one hand even behind his back. But yet, Doomsday steamrolled through Justice League International in what was even acknowledged in the comic book itself as an embarrassing defeat. Not only did they lose, but the defeat was in such fashion that the Justice League International's name was permanently soured.
Coming at number 10, we have Don't Mess with Batman. It will always be somewhat of a mystery as to how Guy Gardner is able to hold on to his lantern ring. The dude is kind of rude and childish, but I will admit he has pulled off some pretty impressive things as a Lantern. He's just not what you would expect from a member of the most renowned space cops, and there have been plenty of times when Guy has crossed the line, like when he was forced to work under Batman with the Justice League International. Guy didn't think this made any sense. Why was a dude in a bat suit telling him what to do? Why was Guy Gardner not the one who was running the team? So Guy kept going on about how he should have been at the helm. He was whining, complaining, and insulting Batman. So Batman wanted to get everyone in order the fastest way possible and one-punched Guy Gardner. He literally knocked the dude out, a Green Lantern, in one shot. So if Guy had any questions about who should be in charge, they would have all been answered as soon as he woke up and put his nose back in place. This was hero on hero, but for Guy this was still pretty damn embarrassing to get floored from one shot. Coming in at at number 9, we have the Lantern Club. I mean, if I was a villain with super strength, I would have done the same move. It's really killing 2 birds with 1 stone, or 2 supers with 1 super. If you flip open the comic Countdown to Crisis issue 3, you will see 2 heroes squaring off against 1 villain. In the hero's corner, you have Troya and Hal Jordan, a powerful team up that would normally come out victorious. And in the villain's corner, we have Mary Marvel, a villain that sounds like she should be in a straight-to-DVD Christmas special, but in this encounter, she showed that she's no slouch. When she takes on the 2 do-gooders, she quickly knocks down Troya and then snags Hal by his ankle and then proceeds to beat Troya with Hal using the lantern like a club. And just like that, you have both of them bloodied and beaten. Really, that was the most effective way to get the job done. Coming in at number 8, we have Spider-Man versus the Spot. The Spot will go down as one of the worst Spider-Man villains ever, but that doesn't mean that he wasn't able to get one over on Spidey. For those of you who don't know, the Spot is a villain that is covered with small portals all over his body. Think of him as the game portal, where you go in one portal and you come out the other, even if it defies the laws of physics. In their encounter, Spider-Man tries to punch the Spot and ends up clocking himself in the face. It was like a grade school bully going, "Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself." Coming in at number 7, we have Pants Punched and KO'd. Not all supers come from Marvel and DC, so when I get a chance, I like to sneak in some moments from outside the superhero norms. For this one, we're gonna head into the world of anime to one of my favorite shows, My Hero Academia. In season 1, we have the Sports Festival, where new promising heroes go up against each other for the entertainment of the people. In this tournament, we see Aoyama, who has a belly laser power similar to Cyclops, but it comes out of his stomach. He goes up against Ashido, who has acid powers. The 2 square off in a short scrap that ends with Ashido blasting Aoyama's belt line with acid. This causes his pants to fall down, and Ashido slides in and uppercuts him unconscious. So getting knocked out while you're scrambling to pull up your pants, yeah, that's one of the worst ways to go out. Coming in at number 6, we have Packing on the Pounds. You only have to look at comic books for about 4 seconds to get enough unrealistic body standards to give an entire generation of people body dysmorphia. So when one hero puts on enough pounds that he couldn't even use his powers, that really sticks out, especially when your power is how fast you can move. I mean, if this was to happen to the Blob, I don't think anyone would notice. Being big is kind of his thing. Who were we talking about? Well, of course, the Flash. When we zoom back to the Silver Age of comics, we find an issue when one of the Flash's arch enemies, Gorilla Grodd, comes up with a plan to stop the speedster from running, and it's simple but effective. He makes him get so fat that he can't use his powers anymore. Grodd zaps the Flash with a ray that makes him retain water without him knowing. This made him bulk up until he literally weighed a ton. It would be pretty embarrassing to go from the fastest man alive to the star of My 600-Pound Life. Coming in number 5, we have Wolverine Gets a Girl's Touch. Known for being one of the coolest characters in the Marvel Universe, it must have hurt to have his body tossed through building after building from one shot from a 12-year-old girl. In issue 12 of The Runaways, Wolverine is hot on the tail of Cloak. He eventually tracks down Cloak, and lo and behold, he's being protected by Molly Hayes, aka Princess Powerful. He tries to negotiate, but things turn violent pretty quickly. Downside for Logan is that Molly is probably one of the strongest mutants ever, and with one touch he's fired out of there like a snot rocket in the shower. Getting beat up by a girl must have not been the easiest emotional scar to get rid of. Coming in at number 4, we have the Yellow Room. Lanterns are very particular about colors. Some are good, some are bad, and there's a spectrum, blah 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 blah. While in All-Star Batman and Robin, we see Hal Jordan get pranked, triggered, and beat up by his least favorite color, yellow. Batman is going out of his way to mess with Hal Jordan, decides to explore his artistic side and paint a room yellow. That's quite the statement. This of course sets Hal off when he walks in, but I don't think he was ready for what was about to happen next. A young Robin slips in and manages to pickpocket Hal's ring right off his finger, and then the teenager whoops his ass. Losing your ring, getting humiliated in a yellow room, and getting KO'd by a teenager, that is a rough one. Coming in at number 3, we have Superman is trusting and dumb. Not how you would think to describe the Man of Steel, but when you hear how Lex Luthor was able to trick him, you'll be on my side. There was a comic where Superman is approached by a tailor, a guy who seemed to be a kind fellow who just wanted to do a good deed for the man who keeps the city safe. You can tell that this is an older comic. When was the last time a tailor approached you randomly and offered to make you a suit? Well, this mystery man offers to give the Man of Steel a brand new suit that will freshen up his image. image. Superman thinks this is amazing and accepts. The tailor makes him this suit, and without questioning anything, he puts it on. I think this might have been a case of superhero privilege. You think that you should be getting gifts from strangers at any time of the day. Well, it turns out this generous tailor was actually Lex Luthor in disguise. You think the world's greatest hero would be on the watch for the one person who's trying to kill him 24/7, but I guess he let this one slip. Oh, and there's more. Lex Luthor planted a trap in the suit. He sewed a lead-covered clump of kryptonite into the suit, which Superman never noticed. He didn't take the half second to look at the suit with his X-ray vision. Nope, there's literally a bomb in his clothes that will expose him to his weakness at the worst moment, and it was given to him in person by his arch-enemy. Lex Luthor would have had to put Superman through a whole fitting process, and he still didn't pick up on it. Coming at number 2, we have Tin Can Iron Man. As time goes on, we have seen heroes and villains become more intricate. The way that they fight, how they can be beaten, how they use their powers. For the most part, all of these things have become more exciting. But when some heroes were originally crafted, they didn't have such interesting pieces to them. For this slip up, let's head all the way back to Avengers number 2. In this issue, the team of Earth's mightiest heroes has an enemy they never thought they would have to face: themselves. Well, kinda. See, they take on Space Phantom. This is a villain who can copy any form exactly. There's literally nothing off about his imitations, and this was his plan to beat the Avengers, by turning them on each other. This was Civil War before Civil War. At first the Avengers are fooled, but then they learn his tricks, and while the Space Phantom is a perfect imitation of Iron Man, Thor is able to stop him by making it rain. And not in the cool way. He didn't throw a stack of cash in his face. Literally, rain comes down and it rusts the perfect imitation of Iron Man so he can't move. I know some of you at home are going to complain because it was Space Phantom that was beaten and not Iron Man, but it was a perfect imitation of Iron Man, meaning that Iron Man could have also been beaten by rust, which is one of the most embarrassing things that Iron Man could have learned about himself. And coming in at the number 1 spot, we have the Justice League losing to Killer Frost. There's no shortage of villains that have ice powers. When it comes to Killer Frost, she's okay. She's never really had a moment to shine. She isn't really a villain that any S-tier hero would even bother with. She would be happy to see Elastic Man show up to fight her. But there was one time when her and the Suicide Squad were taking on the Boy in Blue, and Enchantress was able to smash Superman so hard he was laying on the ground immobilized. Soup has always had trouble with magic users. Well, Killer Frost was there and saw this as a golden opportunity. She used her powers to suck Superman's energy dry, draining him of his life force and his powers. She then flew off and took out the entire Justice League. Now, while it being hard for anyone from the League to take down someone that powerful, the fact that they let someone like Killer Frost get the drop on them, that is pretty embarrassing. This is one of the biggest upsets in comic book history.
Starting at number 10, stealing the powers of the Silver Surfer. Fantastic Four from 1961, number 57, sees Dr. Doom take the power cosmic from the Herald of Galactus himself. The Silver Surfer ends up in Latveria and receives an invitation from Dr. Doom himself. The Surfer goes and Doom gives him a tour of his laboratory, acting very uncharacteristically humble and friendly. He then distracts the Surfer with a temporal photo of the universe, because of course he does, and then uses inductors to steal his cosmic powers. Doom then steals the Surfer's surfboard and flies to New York to attack the Fantastic Four with his newfound power. Number 9. Avengers Emperor Doom. In Avengers Emperor Doom, Victor uses a psychoprism to imprison the villain Purple Man, and use his willpower manipulating abilities to force nearly everyone on Earth to obey Dr. Doom. He obviously succeeded, with the only Avenger not affected by Purple Man's powers being Wonder Man, who is horrified to find Doom in control of the entire world. Only, Doom's world isn't exactly a bad place. Peace has been achieved, crime is practically non-existent, even nuclear weapons have been destroyed, and apartheid had been ended. On the other hand though, the people of the world were not actually free to do what they wished with their own willpower. Since Doom is ultimately the villain though, Wonder Man begins freeing the Avengers, who collectively have the strongest willpower, so they can team up to overthrow Doom, setting the world back to its former order. But I think a lot of readers were kind of like, hey, wait a minute, maybe Doom's world ain't so bad, bro. If you fans of Doom are enjoying this video, and you aren't already, make sure you subscribe to us here at Top 10 Nerd to see more videos like this one. Alright, moving on. Number 8. Saved the multiverse. In 2015's Secret Wars, the Beyonders, incredibly powerful alien entities from another dimension, planned to destroy all of creation by using the Molecule Man, who was actually created by the Beyonders, to be detonated and act as a universe-destroying force. Luckily for all of reality, Dr. Doom exists. The Molecule Man from Earth 616, along with Dr. Doom and Doctor Strange, gathered a bunch of Molecule Men from various realities, combined them into a super weapon, and launched this weapon against the Beyonders with a kiss and a hug. It completely destroyed the Beyonders, but it also destroyed everything else. Someone needed to take the energy from the Beyonders and recreate all of existence, and who is more worthy than Victor Von Doom? Doom recreated reality in the form of Battleworld. Now, of course, in this new reality, Doom was the Emperor, the Thing was turned into a giant wall, and Johnny Storm was the sun, but the villain Dr. Doom saved the Marvel multiverse. How many heroes can say that? Number 7. Selling Doctor Strange to Mephisto. In the beginning of his comic book life, Doom wanted nothing more than to save his mother from the hold of Mephisto. Once a year, every year, Doom would challenge Mephisto for the fate of his mother's soul, but he almost always lost. Until 1989, when he teamed up with Doctor Strange in Triumph and Torment. Shortly after their arrival in Hell, the Doctors began to realize that they don't really stand a chance at winning at all. When the two become separated, Mephisto makes Doom an offer. Doctor Strange's soul in exchange for his mother's. A deal that Doom actually accepts. Doom captured Strange and made the deal, but after Doom's mom became so offended that her son would sell the Sorcerer Supreme just to save her soul, she refused to be freed, and that's when Dr. Doom's real plan could actually kick in. Thanks to his mother's pure act and a gadget that Doom slipped into Strange's cloak, the Sorcerer Supreme was able to use the light of this pure act to wound Mephisto and free himself and Victor's mother, and the three of them escaped. Doom pulled an old Uno reverse by not letting the Sorcerer Supreme in on his plan. Number 6. Doombots. In the Ultimate Spider-Man animated series, in an episode fittingly titled Doomed, the heroes decide to prove themselves by catching S.H.I.E.L.D.'s most wanted villain, Dr. Doom. The kids actually seem to do it though, successfully capturing Doom and returning him to the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier. But it's never that simple with Dr. Doom. After he arrives, Doom reveals that he was actually the Mark VI Hoberman, which is a version of the Doombot with a bunch of smaller Doombots inside, each smaller than the last one, like one of those Russian nesting dolls. The robots work together, very nearly crashing the helicarrier and everyone inside. One of the littlest Doombots even yells, "Feel the wrath of Doom!" in like a super high-pitched voice. It's honestly quite fantastic. Number 5. He was a more successful Iron Man. Infamous Iron Man will forever be one of my favorite Dr. Doom related stories, and it's honestly because of that awesome armor, but also because Doom almost does a better job fighting crime than Tony Stark himself. Taking up the mantle of the then comaed Tony Stark, Victor Von Doom declares himself a hero and went about trying to fix the world. But not just any hero, he specifically takes on the role of Iron Man. One of the ways Doom went about saving the world was using his knowledge of the criminal underworld, from when he was a criminal, to arrest a large gathering of villains in one big move. What's kind of hilarious is that these villains were all gathered to figure out what they were going to actually do now that Doom has switched sides. During that, Doom busts in through the roof and took down heavy hitters such as the Wizard, the Wrecking Crew, the Hood, and Jigsaw all in one go. Number 4. Doom War. If you've never read Doom War, it's probably one of Dr. Doom's more ruthless moments. Essentially, after funding a coup that banished T'Challa from Wakanda, Doom set his sights on Wakanda's treasure, the Vibranium Mound. However, T'Challa had hidden the Vibranium behind a series of increasingly complex locks. The last of these locks was a bit more spiritual, as in order to get through it, you needed to be deemed worthy by the Panther God herself. Not many of us thought Doom could do that, but it's Dr. Doom. He immediately strips down to his nothings and offers himself up for judgment. Now the Panther Goddess realizes and notes that not only does Doom want to create a peaceful world for all mankind, but that out of a million different futures, his is the one that creates a world without evil. You can imagine that T'Challa was quite taken aback by that one. Number 3. Save the world where others failed. Again, I guess. In Marvel 2-in-1, The Thing and Human Torch, an alternate universe story, The Thing was killed trying to fight Galactus with his fists. Honestly, someone should have told him that that was a bad idea. Either way, it happened, and Reed Richards went mad with grief and tried to take down Galactus himself, which actually didn't didn't work out and left the whole world defenseless. And of course, it's Dr. Doom who comes to the rescue, with both a plan and alien technology. Doom ends up swapping minds with Galactus, leaving the Devourer trapped in Doom's body while Doom's mind now controls the cosmic force of nature. Despite his newfound hunger, Doom swore to the people of Earth that they would be spared, and he didn't lie. Doom didn't eat the Earth. Instead, he ate literally everything else in the whole entire universe. But he defeated Galactus and Reed Richards did not, and that probably made Doom happier than any amount of planet consuming. Number 2, the Sentry. I could very easily do a speed round of Dr. Doom overpowering heroes and villains alike. He's removed the powers of the Fantastic Four in Fantastic Four number 70. His willpower is strong enough to overcome the persuasion powers of Purple Man and Emperor Doom. He has put down the Hulk, taken hits from Thor, and sensed the telepathic powers of Emma Frost. But I think what kind of makes me drop my jaw more than anything else is when he has gone up against the Sentry. The Sentry is probably the most powerful of Marvel's Superman-like characters. He's kind of basically a god. But Doom is Doom, and Doom cares not for gods. Not only has he tanked hits from the Sentry, which is absolutely insane, but in the Mighty Avengers number 10, Doom uses magic to very, very badly hurt a mentally distressed Sentry simply for placing his hands on the one and only Doom. And in at number 1 is Latveria. Okay, so this point isn't really a single instance, it's more like a constant. One of the biggest things about Doom that I think puts heroes to shame on the daily is the fact that he has made his country one of the greatest in the world, and despite being a bit of a dictator, his people love him for it. After becoming Doom, he returned to Latveria and took the country from the dictator that had ruined his life from birth. And he made the country one of the greatest nations on Earth. Some of the lowest crime rates, the highest literacy, and the highest employment rates, and it's a world power. He had complete control always, but unlike dictators who are loved at first and then hated, Doom was always loved. Heroes like Ben Grimm, for example, found this out on their own in issue number 10 of Infamous Iron Man when Ben was talking to a Latverian citizen. He said, "At least Doom is gone," and then the woman was like, no, I'd give anything to have him back, he always loved us. Number 10, Hulk. We all know of the famous Hulkbuster suit. But would it just blow your minds if I told you that Iron Man has defeated the Hulk without it? Yes, that's right. In Iron Man issue 132, our Golden Avenger faced off mano a mano against the strongest Green Avenger. And when I tell you this was one hell of a fight, I ain't lying. After an attempt at helping Bruce Banner results in the Hulk persona emerging, resulting in Tony donning the suit and protecting his employees, the fight goes from Stark Industries to underwater to an Air Force base where the two basically play baseball with a luggage carrier and Tony's favorite jet. The resulting explosion stunned the Hulk, and in that moment, Tony mustered every bit of solar and reserve energy he could, overriding the safety protocols of his suit to hit the stunned Hulk with a singular massive punch that knocked out Hulk and killed that suit of armor. Number 9, Sentry/The Void. This is one of those do whatever the hell I can to defeat you kind of moments. In the Marvel Siege storyline, Bob Reynolds, the Sentry, one of Marvel's Superman characters, has joined with Norman Osborn and his Dark Avengers, being somewhat taken over by the Void. In the end of the story, the Sentry, using the power of the Void, was directed by Osborn to take out the floating city of Asgard, which he did, sending it crashing to the ground. And then he de-lifed Loki. The other Avengers and Thor have not been able to defeat Sentry/Void yet, so as one last ditch attempt, Iron Man uses a whole Hammer helicarrier as a missile and crashes the whole thing down on top of him. This weakens the Void enough that Thor can end him with a blow from Mjolnir, but damn, Tony really just had enough of this guy. Number 8, Hawkeye. Surprise! Hawkeye does not stand a chance against Iron Man, but he did actually put up a pretty good fight the first 2 times they fought. Both times were in Tales of Suspense in issue 57 and 60. Hawkeye's first appearances before he was actually a hero, when he was instead a criminal. Natasha Romanoff, who is also a criminal at the time, tricks Clint into helping her steal Tony's powerful tech. It doesn't go too well for them though. At the end of the first fight in issue 57, Tony gets Clint clinging onto a pole, which he then bends and flicks like one of those little door stopper things, thwanging little Robin Hood here into the water and then saving the unconscious Clint from drowning. Doth Mother know you have not liked or subscribed? Well, that's okay if you don't want to, but it would be appreciated. Okay, let's move on. Number 7, Captain Marvel and Gamora. Combo! Wham bam! Actually, more like pew pew. Look, love it or hate it, the second Marvel Civil War event happened. I could get into what the conflict itself was actually about, but that doesn't really have anything to do with this point. The main thing you need to know is that just like the first Civil War, the superhuman community is split, with Iron Man leading one side and Carol Danvers leading the other. At the time of this story, Iron Man was sporting his Model Prime armor, an armor that could basically shapeshift and change color for whatever it was he needed to do at the time, making the need for multiple armors a little redundant. During a conflict with Captain Marvel and her group, Tony was under attack from some pretty powerful heroes, specifically Captain Marvel and Gamora jumped in to do battle before they were dispatched from a single blast from Iron Man. Just one shot is all he needed. Damn. Number 6, Emma Frost. Did you know the Avengers fought the X-Men? Yes, it's true. And a comic titled, get this, Avengers vs. X-Men. It's a good title. Seriously though, the conflict blossomed when the Phoenix Force is headed straight to Earth with mutant Hope Summers as its supposed host. The Avengers believe this is bad juju for the population of Earth, and the X-Men think this is gonna be what they need for the mutant population to be reborn. A battle happens between the two teams at the mutant island of Utopia. Partway through, Emma Frost comes to make a move, saying telepathically to Cyclops she can shut down the Avengers telepathically, and she is going to end this. Then Iron Man chimes in, I bet you thought you were just about to end this, as he fires microscopic telepathic tasers at her and hopes she will let him make it up to her over dinner. She punches him in the stomach and he blasts back with his repulsors, but this genuinely made me snicker. Number 5. Facial hair bros. Right smack dab in the middle of the video, sort of not really, I want to do something completely different. Something finally not combat related. Yet a victory for Tony and an embarrassment for none other than Stephen Strange the Sorcerer Supreme. In Invincible Iron Man number 3, Iron Man goes to Doctor Strange for help with a little problem he is having. As he's about to leave the Sanctum Sanctorum, he goes, "Thanks, Doctor," and stays there like this for 8 comic book panels, until Steven gives him a very, very reluctant high five as Tony yells, "Awesome, facial hair bros!" And Steven says, "I hate you." I'm sorry, I had to include this. Number 4, Namor. Iron Man and Namor the Submariner have always had a pretty tense relationship, both having massive egos. They have gone at it with their words and their fisticuffs multiple different times. From what I can tell, the powerful Submariner usually has the win more than often. But Iron Man isn't a pushover. He's gotten some good shots, and in Iron Man number 25 in 1970, we have an example of him winning, in a somewhat hilarious way too. Basically, unbeknownst to Tony, his company had been polluting the ocean with a pipeline. Now yes, that is very, very bad. But if you just go and talk to Tony, I'm sure he'd fix the issue. No, that is not the Submariner's way. No, instead, he attacks, destroying the pipeline and then attacking the buildings it's connected to. To subdue Namor, Tony uses the heating coils of his suit to evaporate all the water in Namor's body, basically rendering him powerless. And then he ties him up to an under construction tower using metal beams. It's kind of hilarious looking, and I feel like Namor could easily slip out of that, like the power of gravity, but it's certainly embarrassing. Number 3, Spider-Man. Spider-Man and Iron Man here have a bit of an interesting relationship. In the MCU, it's very father-son, but in the comics, and specifically in the Civil War event, while Tony takes Peter under his wing and even gives him some great upgrades, actually manipulates the Spider-Lad quite a little bit. Spider-Man switches to Captain America's side, and in Iron Man Volume 4, number 14, Spider-Man, alongside a few other heroes, launch a surprise attack on Tony. While Spider-Man has beaten Tony before, specifically when Tony threatened Mary Jane and Aunt May, the use of the spider armor gave Tony a ton of information about Parker's spider sense. Not just being able to replicate it for himself, but he got the information to use Peter's against him, which he does while making a nice little baseball themed strike 1, 2, and 3, fitting as they are fighting at Yankee Stadium. Number 2, Daredevil. You know what? I really liked Superior Iron Man. The story was cool, and Tony was, well, he was kind of an almost villain, honestly. Specifically, there were 2 times with Daredevil that showcased this really well. After Tony got the whole population of San Francisco addicted to a social media platform, and then began charging them subscription fees for it, trust me, it's a lot more sinister than I'm making it sound, Daredevil goes to Tony's base on Alcatraz Island to confront him, and shut him down. Obviously, that wasn't going to go the way he wanted it to. But even I didn't expect Tony to just pick him up by the throat, tell him he's always welcome but to leave the attitude at home, and then straight up just chuck the blind superhero without fear into the freezing waters of the San Francisco Bay. Cold. Literally. Number 1. Captain America. We love Civil War. Not the actual Civil War, the Marvel one. So many great examples of superheroes fighting other superheroes. But the main star of the show in this conflict is Iron Man versus Captain America. And while the climactic fight ultimately ended in a Captain America favored draw, I'd say the first major fight was definitely more of a win for Tony. In issue 3 and 4 of the main Civil War comic, a battle takes place between the forces of both Cap and Stark. While Steve is fighting Spider-Man, Iron Man comes swooping in, attacking with an armor that's analyzed every fight Cap has ever had. And he just starts going to town on the guy, feeding him the left, right, until Cap is absolutely battered. Cap still doesn't go down, so Tony uses a high frequency that shuts down the human brain. He's about to end the fight when Hercules jumps in, attacking him with an oil tanker truck.
Nearly kills Aquaman in a weird competition in Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, number 115. When Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen is eaten by the same whale that ate Jonah in the Bible, he develops the same superpowers as Aquaman. Jimmy uses these newfound powers to save the day when a bunch of sunken ships surface and almost crash into an aircraft carrier. Superman and Aquaman show up, and Supes asks Aquaman why he didn't handle the incident and implies that he's been slipping ever since his wife Mera disappeared. An incensed Aquaman tells Superman that he is far more powerful than Jimmy and can prove it in any test the Man of Steel comes up with. Superman takes both of them to a desert and explains that since their powers only allow them to be out of the water for an hour, and it has been 55 minutes since they were in the sea, they will soon begin to die. Whoever lasts the longest will be King of Atlantis. He leaves them to struggle and returns to taunt them with a pitcher of seawater. When Aquaman loses, Jimmy has him taken back to Atlantis. Once he's gone, Superman reveals that he is actually Proteus, the old man of the sea in disguise. So technically, this wasn't Superman, but Aquaman doesn't learn this until much later in the comic, so for a chunk of time, he thinks that Superman did all that to him. It's not actually Superman, so I put it in the number 10 slot, but honestly, this behavior wouldn't be that unusual for the Silver Age Man of Steel. Number 9 makes a smut film with Mr. Miracle's wife in Action Comics number 593. In a really bizarre story by John Byrne, Mr. Miracle comes home to Darkseid sitting in his living room. Darkseid informs him that his wife, Big Barda, has been captured and hands him a VHS tape. Mr. Miracle awkwardly crawls around on the floor to put the tape in his VCR and discovers that his wife has been hypnotized and is starring in adult films. He takes off to find his wife. The villain, Sleaze, shows up at the studio to talk to the director and reveals that he also has Superman under his control and suggests that the director use Superman and Big Barda in a film together. Mr. Miracle arrives just in time to see his wife and Superman making out in a shabby bedroom set, and he interrupts the filming. The 3 heroes defeat the villains, but all 3 of the heroes are pretty embarrassed by the situation, and Superman claims that he doesn't remember what happened while under Sleaze's control, but I think he might just be lying to get out of an awkward situation. Anyways, that's the last of these entries on the list where it isn't actually Superman or he isn't in control of his actions, so let's get into the meat of the list. Number 8, his first fight with Batman in Justice League Volume 2, Issue 2. In the story of how the Justice League came together in 2011's New 52 reboot, the heroes are all loners who don't trust each other. When Batman and Green Lantern come across a parademon and a mother box, they are unable to identify it, but realize it is of alien origin. They decide that their best bet is to go to Metropolis and talk to the only other alien they know about, Superman. Due to a misunderstanding, Superman believes that the other two heroes are somehow involved with the parademons and attacks them. Batman tries to hold his own by throwing tear gas, sonic grenades, and tasers at the Man of Steel with no effect. Superman chides the Caped Crusader, telling him, "Your belt's empty, Batman," before grabbing him by the throat and slamming him into a wall. Considering how well Batman managed to do against Superman in subsequent fights, he clearly felt this loss, and I'd argue has never felt so powerless. Number 7, his fight with Green Lantern in Justice League Volume 2, Issue 2. Continuing on from the previous entry, let's talk about how the same fight went for Green Lantern. He spent most of the flight to Metropolis bragging to Batman that he would have no problem beating the Man of Steel. When they found Superman, Hal told Batman to stay back while he handled Superman. Superman then came at him faster than a speeding bullet and more powerfully than a locomotive. While Batman was being mildly irritating at best to Superman, Green Lantern came in for round 2, tying Superman up with constructs of giant chains. Superman smirked and said, "Chains? Really? You're funny, Green Lantern," before easily shattering the construct and renewing his attack. Pretty much all of Hal's confidence shattered at this point, and he protected Batman and himself in a bubble as Superman bounced them around the city. Superman was being pretty intense about the whole situation, but thankfully a timely intervention by the Flash allowed them to recover and explain themselves to the Man of Steel. Number 6, exiles Supergirl to another planet in Action Comics number 258. When Superman's cousin Kara Zor-El came to Earth and revealed that he wasn't the only surviving member of his family, Superman described it as the happiest moment of his life. He then dropped her off at the orphanage and told her that she had to keep her existence a secret. She took all of this in stride and followed Superman's orders until one day she saw Krypto the Superdog flying around. She introduced herself to Krypto and the two had a fun time playing together. Then Superman showed up and started scolding her for revealing her existence. Supergirl very reasonably points out that Krypto is a dog and can't talk, let alone reveal her to the world. Superman responds by banishing her to live on an asteroid for a year in complete isolation. Supergirl stays there for a week before Krypto shows up with a note from Superman telling her that there is a storm of kryptonite dust coming to the asteroid and that she must return to the orphanage in her secret identity of Linda Lee for one day before going back to space for the rest of her exile. Linda shows up at the orphanage but finds herself in a spot of trouble when she comes across a search party that has been looking for the missing orphan. She covers herself in mud and claims to have been stranded in Dismal Swamp for the past week. She dodges reporters' questions and Superman reveals that all the shaming and sending her off into exile was an elaborate test to see if she was clever enough to figure out how to maintain a secret identity. Superman congratulates Supergirl for passing the test and she excitedly asks if this means that she no longer has to keep her existence a secret, and Superman clarifies that he never said that and tells her to continue living in secret until he damn well says so. Number 5 replaces Krypto with a different Superdog in Superboy number 109. Due to his many years in comics and his recent appearance in DC League of Super Pets, you are likely passingly familiar with Krypto the Superdog, but are you familiar with his rival, Swifty the Greyhound? Our story begins when Superboy is fiddling with his Phantom Zone projector while the imprisoned Kryptonian criminals led by General Zod are trying to affect the Boy of Steel by using mental suggestion to convince him to destroy himself. Because of his powers, Superboy isn't affected, so the Phantoms try again with Krypto to no avail. They instead brainwash a dog named Swifty and control him into making a potion that gives him superpowers. When Swifty shows up with powers, Superboy decides to put the two dogs through a series of tests to determine who is the better super pet and will get to go with him on an important space mission. The Phantom Kryptonians help Swifty so that he wins the competition. At this point, Superboy takes away Krypto's cape and gives it to the rival dog. To add insult to injury, he makes Krypto put on a damaged, moth-eaten cape and then ditches his dog to go to space with Swifty. Even Krypto thinks this is a bit much, as on the teaser page for the story, we see him thinking to himself between sobs, "Bad enough my master prefers that supermutt to me, but did Superboy have to give Swifty my snazzy, indestructible cape and make me wear this crummy, moth-eaten spare cape of his?" Swifty eventually betrays the Boy of Steel, who is saved by a timely intervention by Krypto, but that doesn't make his treatment of his dog any less weird and kinda petty. Number 4, one-upping Batman's gifts in World's Finest number 85. When the ruler of Balkania, Princess Verena, comes to America, her only desire is to see the famous heroes Superman and Batman. And if Robin is also there, that's fine. When the two heroes meet the princess, both are immediately smitten and begin competing for the beautiful princess's affection. When Batman goes out and gets her a bouquet of orchids, Superman flies to South America and gets a giant orchid for the princess. Batman gives her a large diamond ring that he bought, and Superman responds by getting a giant piece of coal and crushing it into a giant, supersized diamond and offering it to the princess. Batman takes Verena on a tour of the city in the Batmobile, letting a very unimpressed Robin drive while he puts the Bat moves on the princess. The mood is ruined when they look at a nearby cliff that Superman has defaced by carving a giant heart with the words S loves V. Batman goes to the train station with the princess so she can move on from Metropolis to Gotham, but before he can get on the train, Superman picks up the train and flies it to Gotham, leaving Batman to frantically chase after them in the Batplane. When they discover that the princess is actually in love with her bodyguard, Captain Stefan, the heroes claim that they were just pretending to be rivals in order to better protect her, but come on. Even if that is the case, that doesn't mean Superman had to go so all out on making Batman look like a fool in front of the princess and the entire world. Number 3, making Robin his court jester in World's Finest number 165. When the evil King Wolf escapes from prison, he claims to his men that he is dying. He devises a competition for his henchmen to determine who the new king of crime will be. They must complete 3 robberies, and whoever pulls off the robbery best will be the new king. Batman and Superman suspect that the king is lying about his condition and decide to help the criminals with their robberies in hopes that the king will reveal his true plan. Batman and Robin take out one of the henchmen, and Batman disguises himself as the goon in order to infiltrate the gang. One of the other criminals disguises himself as Superman in order to pretend to stop a robbery and take the loot as evidence. In order to make sure he wins the competition, Batman knows he has to pull off a spectacular crime, and well in disguise as the goon, disguises himself as Batman and holds himself hostage, threatening to have himself killed if the submarine he's robbing doesn't hand over the ship's supercomputer. Robin pretends to not know what's going on, and Batman pretends to capture him and takes him back to the king's hideout. Okay, if you're confused, don't worry, it gets worse. Batman ties with the criminal who is disguised as Superman, who unbeknownst to Batman actually is Superman, and both are crowned the new kings of crime. When asked what his first royal decree is, Superman immediately says he wants to see Robin killed. Like, honestly, it comes to mind a little too fast. Batman is able to claim that since he captured Robin, he should get to decide his fate, and suggests that they make him the new court jester. Superman agrees, and Robin is forced to dress as a jester and perform for the court of criminals, while Batman and Superman tool around. Now, Dick Grayson was a circus performer before becoming a hero, but it's still weird that Superman and Batman made him dress up and give them a full show before making any effort to figure out the criminal's plan. Number 2 frames Batman for witchcraft in World's Finest number 186 and 187. When Batman and Superman go back in time to colonial times, they come across a woman who had been accused of witchcraft and is about to be dunked in the town pond. Superman moves too fast to be seen and goes into the water and uses his steel-like teeth to gnaw through the dunking mechanism. Batman then dives into the water and rescues the woman. She is smitten with Batman and gives him a kiss. Superman thinks to himself, "Isn't that just like a woman? I did the work and Batman's collecting the goodies." In retaliation, the Man of Steel disguises himself as Batman and starts flying around the town on a broomstick. He then uses his super speed to make it look like Batman has turned coal to diamonds, and uses his super ventriloquism to make it look like a black cat is accusing Batman of being an agent of Satan. As an impartial out-of-towner, Superman is chosen to prosecute a very confused Batman. He has Batman put in the stocks and sentences him to be burnt at the stake. When Batman is tied to the stake, Superman uses his heat vision to start the fire, claiming that it is further proof of Batman's demonic powers. Batman is eventually able to make the townsfolk think that Superman is the witch and is set free. Superman tells Batman that he saw that he had been possessed by a demon and was putting Batman in danger to scare the demon out of his body. But as the reader, we can read Superman's thought bubbles during the frame job, and he really does think about how jealous he is that the woman has chosen Batman over him, and is laughing and giggling to himself as Batman begs him to stop the townsfolk from carrying him away in chains. So even if he had a good reason to put Batman in danger, he's getting way too much joy out of it. Number 1 forces Jimmy Olsen to marry a gorilla in Superman's Pal Jimmy Olsen number 98. For anyone claiming Jimmy Olsen doesn't count as a hero, I would remind you that Jimmy has saved Superman's life several times and has developed superpowers even more times, so I'm counting him. In Superman's Pal Jimmy Olsen number 98, Jimmy and Clark are on assignment in the African jungle where a blockbuster movie is being filmed. The film crew is using the local natives as extras, and in exchange are showing the natives a different jungle movie every night. The natives worship a sacred ape named Bruna, who comes into the camp and is enamored with the showing of King Kong. When Jimmy dresses up in a Tarzan costume and begins swinging from vines in an attempt to convince the director to give him a role in the movie, he gets trapped by an underwater pool of quicksand. He is rescued by Bruna the sacred ape, who is immediately smitten with the young cub reporter. The ape tries to woo Jimmy, even bringing him a bouquet of bananas, but Jimmy runs away. The sacred ape goes on a rampage after losing her chosen mate, and Superman decides that the best thing for everyone would be if Jimmy just goes along with it until he can figure out a plan. He drops Jimmy off with the ape and brings them a fruit basket as an engagement gift. Jimmy's girlfriend, Lucy Lane, shows up and makes the ape a bridal veil. Just when things can't seem to get any worse for Jimmy, Superman shows up dressed as a witch doctor to perform the ceremony while the movie crew films the whole thing. Bruna eventually tires of Jimmy and throws him off a cliff, and he is rescued by the Man of Steel, but I think we can all agree that Superman let this one go on a little too far before he intervened.
Number 10. Rejected. Kind of. This one comes from JLA issue number 90 from the 1997 series. Here, Wonder Woman and Batman eventually share a kiss, which prompts Diana to look inside herself and see how she really feels about Bruce and the potential for a relationship with him. After looking deep within her subconscious by using the trans-consciousness articulator, try saying that 5 times fast, Diana decides it would be best if she and Bruce didn't actually end up together. She tells him as much, just as he seems to be ready to say the same. Although he also makes quite the face when she asks him if he felt being with her was worth risking all they already had as friends. And while Bruce seems to say that he agrees with Diana wholeheartedly, his face and the parentheses in his speech bubble seem to imply otherwise to me. All in all, I think both of these two ended up a little bit embarrassed by the whole ordeal, so it's a bit of a two-way street with this one. Batman's embarrassed, Diana's a little embarrassed. Number 9. Exposed to critical weakness. This one comes to us from one of the short stories included in the Wonder Woman 80th Anniversary 100-page Super Spectacular. The story is titled Dreamers, and it features a younger Diana who ends up, even as a kid, exposing a critical weakness in the Amazon's defenses for Doom's doorway. She ends up sneaking into the area with the help of Theo the shark, so great, hoping to get a better understanding of secrets and responsibilities she'll inherit when she becomes queen. By the way, in case you forgot, Diana can communicate with animals in marine life. She can talk to Theo. She's basically like a more bad Disney princess. Successfully sneaking into the area, Diana comes across Nubia, who is tasked with guarding the doorway, and reprimands Diana for sneaking in. Though she also seems like a little bit impressed that Diana, being so young, was able to poke holes in the defenses of her much older and experienced sisters. Fortunately, Nubia's like, don't worry, I won't tell your mom, but I will have to tell her that hey, there's a hole here. We need to fix that. We need to tell these sharks to keep their mouths shut. Number 8. Defeat 'em to beat 'em. You know how we've mentioned the time that Batman incapacitated inadvertently the whole Justice League thanks to his contingency plans being stolen and then used by Ra's al Ghul? Well, he isn't the only one to defeat the Justice League. In fact, Wonder Woman defeated the Justice League without the interference or influence of anyone else. She did it single-handedly, and instead of it being a betrayal, it was actually to try and protect the League. However, the realization that Wonder Woman could take them all out so easily was likely pretty embarrassing when they came to afterwards. This all happened in League of One, where Diana defeated the League in order to protect them against a prophecy. You see, they had to go up against a dragon, but it was supposed to be the League's fate to both succeed in defeating the dragon, but also die in the process of winning that battle. To spare the rest of her friends and teammates, Diana beat them so that she could face the dragon alone and hopefully be the only one to both defeat it and possibly die in the process. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to show us some love in some other places here on the internet, head on over to our Facebook page, click that like, click that follow, and it really does help us out here at the channel, so thanks for doing that. Number 7. Cheaters never prosper. This was a whole thing where I feel like everyone was kind of embarrassed. Pretty much everyone involved I feel like was embarrassed in this one. I know I was embarrassed watching this happen. Oof. We are talking about when in the DCEU in Wonder Woman 1984, Diana competes in an Amazonian triathlon against the other Amazons, despite being very much their junior. The princess is hopeful that she can win the competition despite her lack of experience and her youth in comparison to her sisters. However, when she loses her horse, she has to get resourceful in order to catch back up and ends up taking a shortcut to do so. However, apparently it turns out that this is cheating, and so her perceived victory is considered null and void by her mother, the hero, Queen Hippolyta, who also seems pretty disappointed, but still hopeful when it comes to her daughter's attempt. She's like, look, you can't cheat, but maybe next time. Maybe you get him next time. Don't take shortcuts. I was embarrassed because I was like, really? That was cheating? Oh, okay. I would have done that too. I'm with you, Diana. Number 6. beats down a god with his own weapon. This one comes from Wonder Woman issue 773. Legacy numbering, where Wonder Woman takes on the god Thor. Not Marvel's Thor, who is very much a hero, but DC's Thor, who is still technically a hero, but also is kind of more of a brute than the Thor Odinson of Marvel's Earth 616. Wonder Woman ends up in DC's version of Asgard after the events of Dark Knight Death Metal. Here she learns that there seems to be a problem with souls going missing. She attempts to solve it, but ends up bonking heads with Thor, who isn't much for diplomacy. At least, not initially. Don't worry though, Diana puts him in his place, besting him in combat, taking Mjolnir, smashing him in the face with it before crushing it between her two hands. She's like, hammers, not really my thing. And of course, only then is Thor willing to listen to what she has to say. But don't worry, it all works out in the end. Everyone's able to sit at a table and have a discussion and a beer afterwards, so yay. Number 5. Can't stop killing. It's hard to tell who would be more embarrassed in this scenario, Wonder Woman or all of her friends who try to reach out to her and really epically fail. This all goes down in a dark multiverse tale, a darker version of War of the Gods. Here, Wonder Woman ends up losing her mother and in her darkness finds herself possessed and overtaken by Hecate, who uses Wonder Woman as her host to reach out and conquer Earth. Wonder Woman's friends try to stop Diana and reach her, but she's trapped deep within a pit of despair after having not properly dealt with her emotions, basically. Struggling to find her way back to love and hope, the only solution is for many magic users of DC to band together, sacrificing themselves in order to defeat Hecate, but still unable to bring back Diana. Whew. Zatanna, as a result, keeps Hecate in Diana's body locked away, hoping to one day find a cure for the possession so she can bring back her friend once more. Number 4. Rejected. But for real this time. Real rejection. So this isn't rejection of the romantic sort, but it is the rejection of a kind of, like a team-up sort, I guess you could say. In Wonder Woman the Hecate, Bruce and Diana end up at odds with one another. As such, the two end up in a fight with one another. Wonder Woman handily ends up defeating Batman in that fight, placing her boot on his head as he lays in a puddle, and urges him to not get back up. Batman decides to surrender, which I think is a good choice. Instead of fighting back, Batman tries a new tactic and begs for Diana's mercy and protection. This shocks Wonder Woman as Batman clings to her boots. He calls on the age-old ritual and rites to seek her power and her aid. Wonder Woman, however, reminds Bruce of his history, saying that in times previous, heroic men have been denied, as she chooses to deny him now. Ouch. Looks like Batman needs to brush up on his reading of the Iliad, apparently. Number 3. Poking eyes and breaking arms. And in Justice Gods Among Us Year 4, there is a brutal showdown between Superman and Wonder Woman that is basically orchestrated by Batman. The two face off in a trial by combat style fight in order to settle a dispute, with Wonder Woman being forced to fight as she was nominated by Batman, even though she and Supes are kinda still technically on the same side here. However, this just means that in the end, Diana is able to use Clark's hesitancy to her advantage. She not only defeats Clark, but she does so brutally. At first it seems as though he'll come out victorious, but the fight ends with Diana clearly on top, attempting to gouge out his eyes before succeeding in breaking his arm. Youch. It's not easy to break a Kryptonian's arm, by the way. That is a lot. Number 2. Defeated by love? That's right, Wonder Woman actually defeated someone with basically just the power of love. Although I suppose I shouldn't say like just the power of love. After all, love is kinda Wonder Woman's biggest ideal, I'd say, and it also is extremely powerful if you know how to use it. Case in point, when Diana went up against a villainous Donna Troy. Donna seemingly had the upper hand in the fight, claiming to be the more powerful of the two, designed to be a more perfect version of Diana when Wonder Woman decided to bust out one of her most effective weapons, the Lasso of Truth, which unlike Ghost Rider's Pen and Stare, almost always actually works on the folks that she targets it with. I know there's gonna be Ghost Rider fans coming for me in the comments. They're gonna be like, look, the Pen and Stare is great, but I'm just saying, I can give you so many examples of times it didn't work. I think it's almost equal, it's like a 1-for-1. Compelled to see and realize the truth, Diana reminded Donna of what it really meant to be an Amazon. It's not about power, you see, or strength, it's about being part of a culture, being part of a family, being a sister. That is the most important defining word of Amazonian culture. Sister. And with that one word and realization, Diana handily defeats her sister Donna using nothing but truth and love. Number 1. The truth comes out. One of the most memed Power Girl and Wonder Woman moments comes from the 2007 The Brave and the Bold series in issue number 7. While many people have spun this series of panels with their own reason for why Kara is so shocked at her answer to Wonder Woman's question, changing up just what that answer is, the real dialogue sees Kara handing back Wonder Woman's lasso of truth and while passing it over to her, answering Diana's question of, where she's off to next. Power Girl responds in the comic that she's off to go kill Superman, shocking both herself and Diana, and leaving her super embarrassed while Diana is convinced that something must be wrong with Power Girl. Perhaps she's brainwashed or she's possessed, as the lasso obviously compels those it touches to only tell the truth. So, she's gotta be telling the truth. Wow, what an embarrassing way to realize that that's going on.